Hello, and welcome to the Hour in the Word podcast, a ministry of Village Church of Lincolnshire. I'm your host, Pastor Casey Dwyer, and we are in the middle of our series covering the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. The intention of these podcasts is to be a supplement to the in-class discussion at 9 a.m. at Village Church. In these short podcasts, I want to share with you some insights, some thoughts, some considerations regarding what we are studying. And today, I just wanted to highlight a fascinating character in the book of Genesis, Nimrod. Nimrod shows up in the list of genealogies in Genesis 10. He's the great-grandson of Noah by Noah's son Ham, and the author breaks the repetition of naming descendants to tell us about this guy, Nimrod. Here's what the author says. This is in Genesis 10, verse 8 through 12. And there's a lot of names here that I'm going to try my best at. So it says in verse 8, it says, Cush, that's Ham's son, fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Now there's a lot to notice about Nimrod here. He is the first mighty man, according to the author. We read further that he is a mighty hunter before the Lord. And this designation, it relates to his strength, and really most particularly to his status as a warrior. He is a super warrior. We also learn that Nimrod is a kingdom builder. He is the first empire builder. We read of several cities or regions that Nimrod controlled or founded, and a few stick out. Babel, which is actually Babylon, the city that rebelled against God just a chapter later by attempting to storm the heavens. We also see Assyria is under his control, and especially Nineveh, Assyria's capital. And we read finally about a city called Rezin, which the author calls the great city. And so we see that this guy Nimrod, he is a warrior, he is a city builder, and he is an emperor. But we often miss, I think, how radically different Nimrod's actions are in relationship to what has come before. We see here the first example of somebody whose fighting is ultimately a fight with God. Nimrod's people in chapter 11, they attempt to storm heaven and take God's place in the Tower of Babel story. And I think that they get this idea from the strong man of Nimrod himself. Nimrod is the ruler of the whole host of cities that we see continually over and over rebel against God in the Old Testament. They're God's enemies, Babylon and Assyria. And this designation of a mighty man, I don't think it's positive. He is the first of a long line of pagan kings, pagan rulers, whose acts display that they view themselves as the ultimate authority. I think that's what is going on when we read this phrase, Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. What Nimrod is doing is he's vying for a kind of divine status. And see, before in the book of Genesis, yeah, sure, we saw violence. We saw evil. We saw humans polluting the world with their sin. But now we are seeing nations rise up, distinct peoples who are coming together not just to do evil, but to battle against God himself. We see the rebellion of humans taking a new level. I mean, this is what the psalmist talks about in Psalm 2, when the psalmist says, "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us burst their bonds apart and cast their cords away from us." I think that's what Nimrod symbolizes, a king setting himself against the Lord, seeking to destroy him and thwart his purposes. But the psalmist in Psalm 2, if you remember what comes next, he continues by saying, "He who sits in the heavens laughs." The Lord holds them in derision. I think this is the world we live in, where strong men, mighty hunters, actively do violence and set themselves against God, where the powerful seek to take his place. We live in a world of Nimrod, but we must always remember that in the end, he who sits in the heavens laughs. No mighty hunter is a match for the living God, and God, the living God, will hold each strong man, every evil tyrant, accountable. That's what we learn, I think, from this story of Nimrod. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. This is just a short snippet of what we're studying in class at 9 a.m. in the Great Room. And if you'd like to know more or have any questions, you can always reach out to me at cdwyer@evcl.org. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.